I'm a robot that just does what the Prime Minister says, well then we might as well literally have a robot to give the robot Queen's speech, because if there is no filtering, no moral filtering whatsoever done by the monarch, they have to literally parrot what an evil Prime Minister says, well, have a robot. So I say no. I say the monarch has a moral duty to tick that Prime Minister off and tell him to go away and write a new speech which is a bit more humble, which is a bit more intelligent. Anyway, discuss. But that's my radical proposal. But I think old Anthony Ashley Cooper would probably quite agree, because sneakily that puts power back into the Lords. I think this whole Commons business is the Commons as we know it is no longer fit to be the Commons of the entire UK. Half the Irish MPs don't go from Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin. They realised it's a racket. And so I'm suggesting that become just the Parliament of England, and the House of Guardians, or Reformed House of Lords, be the UK Parliament of the government. Anyway, these are ideas in process. Otherwise, Scotland's out. It's the UK as we know it. Cut the flag up, please. It's gone. I don't want that to happen. I want the saints to rally at the last minute, and I'm hoping that a lot of them will be there tomorrow on the march. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Shaftesbury carried on. He was he married. He loved a woman called Jane Ewer. They had a happy marriage. He had a son, and then he retired to Italy, where his health was preferred. And he retired to Naples, and I totally agree with him. Naples is a superb city. I love it. It's got one of the best libraries and universities in the world. It's where Thomas Aquinas studied. It was founded by Frederick II, one of the greatest of all Holy Roman Emperors, who was the patron of Michael Scott, who I talked about recently. Naples has got one of the best museums of classical antiquities in the world. If you haven't been to Naples, go there. And I love the fact that the third Earl of Shaftesbury ended up there. And he actually died there, bless him. I'm not sure if he's buried there or not, or if he was shipped back to Dorset. Why is he important? Okay, because as a philosopher of Christianity, he'd read his Luke, he'd read his Gospels, he'd read his Cicero, he'd read all the classics, and he didn't read into them the horrible, nasty kind of life is brutish and short of Hobbes and the Conservatives. He read the light. He saw that there's good news in these Gospels and in this lineage that he belonged to. And the good news is that of love. It's what I said when I read out the passage that Christ read out about the good news for the poor. Now that only works if we have what Shaftesbury called a moral sense. He argued in his various essays and writings an inquiry concerning virtue or merit in 1699, a letter concerning enthusiasm, and Sensus Communis, an essay on the freedom of wit and humour, and The Moralists, a philosophical rhapsody, and other writings, which were put together in 1711 in a volume called Characteristics of Men, Manners, Opinions and Times. He argued that there has to be freedom of thought in society. There has to be enlightenment for people to be able to freely think their way to truth. You can't impose on people, this is the truth, and if you don't agree with it, I'll torture you and give you to the Inquisition. Therefore, he was a liberal in that classic sense with a capital L. He believed in freedom of thought and freedom of religion, freedom of inquiry, and even atheism and other religious views should be included in the discussion, because only by including and discussing can we really get to truth. If we silence, this is his point about not silencing, if we silence discourse, then it bubbles up somewhere else. That's why I'm not saying, the referendum was necessarily a terrible thing. Let's have the discourse, but having had that discourse, let's freely choose the good. having glimpsed the abyss of evil and racism and xenophobia and national break-up and breakdown, no, thank you very much, I don't want that. Sorry. And he premised all this on his faith, which is that mankind is fundamentally naturally virtuous. This only works if there is something good inside us. Christ's appeal to the innate goodness of human beings is possible because it's there within us latently. And the teacher's job is just to bring it out. So that was why Shaftesbury was important. We are, as a country, Britain is a good country. Let's not have a crisis over this. Most of the people that voted Brexit are good people. Most of the people, well, I would say all the people that voted Remain are good people. But, there's good and bad in everyone, right? Ultimately, there's only good. Once we work it out, once we untangle the knots, as it says in the Tao Te Ching. So Shaftesbury was very much like a Taoist Christian philosopher who believed in the innate goodness, as Mencius did, of human nature. In order to get there, there has to be knowledge. So freedom of thought, freedom of research, freedom of study, that's why education is so important. Now, when I look at the Tories and I look at what they stand for, and always have really, even back in his day, it's a different philosophy. It's a philosophy based on fear and repression, criminality and punishment, because fundamentally people are evil and wicked. So you can't give them too many benefits. You can't make life too easy for them because they'll take advantage of it. You have to make universal credit really difficult. You have to make the poor suffer because they're all evil and nasty. And they're all, crusty revolutionaries with rings in their nose and stuff. So there's this Tory kind of hatred, actually, of life. You can't give benefits to people if they've had more than 2 children. I mean, God, who would want more than 2 children? It's an anti-life kind of ideology based on fear. And you can't have foreign people coming in too much, blacks and brown people. I mean, God, what's the world coming to? That's the Tory way of thinking. And that's what's behind Brexit. Because life is terrible and evil. And their view of Christianity is, well, God, life is terrible and evil, but don't worry, because we're Tories, we'll get to heaven. Those hopaloi won't be allowed in, but we're going to Anglican heaven at the end of the time, which is only for a small number, and they're predestined. That was pre-liberal thinking. That's what the old school used to think, sort of going back to medieval Augustinian stuff. Whereas, thank God for the liberal enlightenment, of which Shaftesbury was one of the most important figures in British intellectual history. And I'm so proud of the fact that he was associated with Poole, my old stomping grounds. May Dorset's enlightenment shine forth, please. And may we affirm our love for Europe. Let's all have the right to do what he did, the Grand Tour. Let's all have the right to fall in love with the classics of European literature and go to the places where they were written. Go to Athens, go to Rome, go to Naples, fall in love, sit in their libraries like I've done. Okay, and then maybe we'll find out where Luke is buried. Maybe we'll find his tomb somewhere in Greece, which is, my other home as a lover of the muses. So let's give praise to Luke. Let's give thanks for what he did. And let's carry on with it. He wasn't a small-minded person. He wasn't bringing, bad news for the poor, bad news for the sick, bad news for everybody. He was bringing good news to unite everybody into a community of love, and lit up by that lightning flash, that Vajra lightning bolt from the kingdom of God. So let's please do the lighting up now, and reflect on what I've said, and tell your fellow parishioners to watch this. Please listen to my commentary on the Gospel of Luke in its totality, of which this is just a fragment. And I wish all the marchers tomorrow on the march in London well. I hope to be there, if not in body, then in spirit. But you might find me on that march. So, thank you so much, and I wish to say thank you to everyone in Britain that's struggling with this now, and may we be guided by this light, this sensus communis, this moral sense, to make the right choice tomorrow in the parliamentary debate, which I hope is going ahead, and to choose the only fair way out of this, which is going to be a second referendum. Put it back to the people, see what we think. I will be voting to remain in the European Union. I'll be voting to remain in the common universality of our common heritage, which is represented today by St. Luke, and all the classical traditions that are commented on and in the context in which he was given birth to.